Let's get started on Module 12, installing VMware vSphere components. There are three parts to Chapter 12. Part 1, we install ESXi on the host computer, and we install the vSphere desktop client on your workstation. In Part 2, we install vCenter Server, the vSphere web client, and the vCenter Server appliance. In Part 3, we look at advanced installation methods such as booting from storage area network. So let's do Part 1, installing ESXi and installing the vSphere desktop client. You install ESXi on the big host computer, and you install the vSphere desktop client on your workstation in your office so you can remotely connect to that host computer and then create virtual machines on that host computer. So we have three main steps. 1, download the installation disks. 2, install ESXi on our big host computer, and then install the vSphere desktop client on our workstation. So to download the install disks, you connect to VMware.com, and on VMware.com you will see downloads, and you can download vSphere. So we select download vSphere, and there are two install ISOs that I would like you to download. The first one we're going to use right now, and that's VMware ESXi, and that's what they call the hypervisor install disk. So we will select VMware ESXi, and we see that we're going to download VMware ESXi. This is an ISO image, meaning it's an install image which includes VMware tools. So I will select download now, and that will download it to the hard disk on my workstation. And then after I have downloaded the ISOs, I burn the ISOs to DVD, and that gives me an ESXi install DVD, which they also call the hypervisor install, and that's what we're going to use right now. And then you can also create the vCenter install DVD, which we will use in Chapter 4. To install ESXi on the host computer, you take the install DVD, put it in the host computer, turn it on, and it boots to the install DVD. So let's do that. Let's boot, and the host computer boots, and it boots to the install DVD, and we see the ESXi standard installer. So we press the Enter key, and then the installation files load up, and we see welcome to VMware ESXi installation, and it warns us you might want to check the hardware compatibility list to verify that your hardware is compatible with VMware. We press Enter to continue and press F11 to accept the licensing agreement. Then we see select a disk to install on, and we only have one disk installed. So we select that one disk. We only have one disk in this host to install ESXi on. So we just press the Enter key to select that disk. We select the keyboard layout, which is US default. Then we type in the root password, which they also call the administrator's password, and whatever you do, don't lose that password. Then we press the Enter key, and we see confirm install. The installer is configured to install ESXi on the hard disk. The disk will be repartitioned. We press F11 to install, and then it proceeds to install ESXi on our host computer. Then we can see ESXi has been successfully installed. It tells us to remove the install disk and then to reboot. So I remove the install disk and I press Enter to reboot. It shuts down and it restarts, and it loads ESXi into memory. And now we can see that VMware ESXi has been installed on this host computer. So you can see it's a pretty easy install. And then after doing the initial installation, then you use the Direct Console user interface to configure TCP/IP variables, including IP address, subnet mask, default gateway, DNS hostname, and DNS suffix. So let's do that. To configure the ESXi host, we go to the bottom left-hand corner and select F2. Then we type in the administrator's password, which is root, and then we type the administrator's name, which is root, and then we type in the password, followed by enter. Then we select Configure Network Management and press enter, and we select IP4 configuration and press enter, and we select Set Static IP4 Address. So we type in an IP address to assign to this ESXi host. We type in the subnet mask and the default gateway. Then we press the enter key. To configure DNS, we select DNS configuration and press enter. And then we type in the IP address of the primary DNS server. Now notice the default name of this computer is simply hostname, which is not a very good name, so I will rename it and I will call it ESXi6. Then I will press enter for OK. And then the custom DNS suffix, for us, it will be ccbcmd.edu. Then I press the enter key. Then to save the changes, I press escape, and it says, do you want to apply these changes? And I say yes. And then I'm done. So I press escape, and now you can see I have successfully assigned a host name and an IP address to this ESXi host. So you install ESXi on the host, and you assign the IP address and host name locally, meaning you are standing at the ESXi host in the server room. But you typically only do that for the initial installation and for the assignment of the IP address. Most of the time, you're not going to be going to the server room to configure the ESXi host. You are going to configure the ESXi host remotely using the vSphere desktop client. The vSphere desktop client is installed on your workstation in your office. The purpose is to connect to the ESXi hosts so you can then create virtual machines on the hosts. To install the vSphere desktop client, you go to a browser and you type in an IP address of one of your ESXi hosts. And when you do that, it connects to the ESXi host, and it gives us a warning because we have not yet installed certificates. And we select Advanced, and we select Proceed. And now we see Welcome to VMware ESXi. Under Getting Started, we can download the vSphere client for Windows. So I select that, and it proceeds to download the install program for the desktop client. Now the install program has been downloaded. Now I will run the install program by clicking on it and click on Run, and it extracts the install program. And now you can see the VMware vSphere client install wizard. So I click on Next, and I accept a licensing agreement, followed by Next. And it says, ready to install the program, click Install to begin the installation. And I click on Install, and it installs the vSphere desktop client on my workstation. Installation complete. I click on Finish, and then you will see that a shortcut has been added to my desktop. And if I click on that shortcut on my desktop, it brings up the vSphere desktop client. So I type in the IP address of the ESXi host I want to connect to. I type in the administrator name, which is root. I type in the password. Then I click on Login, and it gives me an error message regarding the certificates or lack thereof. So what I do is I click on the checkbox, and this will allow me to install the self-sign certificate, which is already on the ESXi host. I will select ignore, and what ignore means is it means ignore the error message, but go ahead and install the certificate. I will click on ignore. Now you can see I am connected to the ESXi host. What is a host? A host is a computer that uses virtualization software such as ESXi to run virtual machines. If I look at the Summary tab, I can see that this is a Dell PowerEdge with 12 CPUs and 256 gig of RAM. If we look at virtual machines, you can see I have already installed 3 virtual machines on this host computer. We can see that the resource allocation is evenly distributed, but we can configure this later on in the course. Under performance, you can see that this ESXi host is not working very hard at all. Under configuration, we can see that our health status, no problems there. Under users, we could add additional users to be administrators. Events shows us any error messages that may have appeared on the system. And under permissions, we can give different people different levels of permissions to different virtual machines on the same ESXi host. The vSphere desktop client allows us to connect to an ESXi host and to configure virtual machines on that ESXi host. In summary, when we install ESXi in the vSphere client, we 1. Download the ISOs and burn them to install DVDs. Then we install ESXi on our host computer, and we install the vSphere desktop client on the workstation. And then we use the vSphere desktop client to connect to the ESXi host so we can then create virtual machines on that ESXi host. And of course, in Chapter 3, we will go into great detail on creating virtual machines. Otherwise, this concludes Part 1. Thank you very much, and have a nice day.